Welcome back to Cal Park Bros. Jason, have you heard of the Great Office Return?
I have heard of it. I haven't quite heard it in that term, but yeah, I have heard about that general, discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, I checked out this article and it says working in sweatpants may be over as companies contemplate the Great Office Return. This guy says on a walk outside his office in downtown Washington D.C., Greg Meyer stops to peer in through the glass windows of a fast casual brunch spot. The exposed brick interior gives it a cozy coffee house vibe, but the lunch crowd is nowhere to be seen. The whole place is dark. Now, with vaccines available on demand and infection rates falling, Meyer believes businesses have a civic duty to bring workers back. It's time now, he says. We've got to do everything we can to get people back as quickly as possible. Now, Meyer happens to be the region head for Brookfield Properties, which owns almost all the buildings on this block in Washington, D.C., and hundreds more around the country. Meyer says that the pandemic put places like that fast casual spot out of business. 15 months into the pandemic, Brookfield's office buildings in Washington are only at about 13% occupancy, down from 80% in normal times. Companies that ordered their employees to work from home in March 2020 are only now starting to bring them back into the office. Some are waiting until fall to bring back workers in significant numbers, while others have no plans to return to pre pandemic work arrangements at all. It makes me worried, Myers says. We have to make sure that the city is vibrant again, that businesses feel welcome. So it sounds like, given that this individual has a slight, um, you could call it a conflict of interest, or you could call a professional interest in getting shit back to normal, as we like to say here on Cal Park Rose. What are your thoughts on this person basically saying that we have a civic duty to bring workers back into community, like commercial populaces, like the one that he's referencing in Washington, D.C.?
Um, in some regard, I agree with him, and some I do not. I will say that in a way, it is a civic duty to get workers back in full, mode of doing their jobs and whatnot in offices that need them in the office. I get that. As they say, stimulating the economy, as you've heard a certain former president say a lot, um, which is important. But the other thing to keep in mind, and I think he even said this, is that has to be done safely and smartly, depending on the locale of where these businesses are. Just like Chicago, where you're at, has to keep its own standing in mind when it comes to, okay, when are we going to start doing this capacity percentage? When are we going to bring people back to the office? Same thing for here in Indianapolis. Businesses in Indy have to decide, okay, based on our employees, based on our city, our state, is it safe for us to bring them back now? And then also, if we are going to start bringing them back now, how are we going to do it? Is a full return right now the smart thing to do, bringing everybody back to the office full time, 100% right next to each other? Is some type of hybrid model the smart thing to do right now? And if so, when can we start that? Should we wait to do that in the fall? Should we go and start doing it now, start phasing people back in? Or should we, do the phase in now and in the fall bring everybody back full time? And then also too, companies need to think about, which I'm sure they've already done this. Are you going to bring people back to the office at all? Or are we going to start being 100% remote? Because we see what we've been doing and it's working. Productivity is up. We're saving money, whatever it may be. So I think all that has to be factored in. And I think if you're an employee of a certain company, I think you can easily tell what the company's motivations are based off timing, statements, things like that. I do believe, for at least for the company I work for, I definitely think they're keeping the employees in mind when it comes to safety and being smart about it. And I'm sure you can tell what your company, what their goals are, what their opinions are of this as well. But I think all that has to keep in mind, and obviously vaccination rates in your area as well, and also of your employees. I'm sure is going to be a factor. If most of your employees are say they're vaccinated. I'm sure that might speed up the process when it comes to bringing people back together, because you think that, hey, this is going to make things a little safer. Even though what we discussed last week, the vaccine is not a magic pill. It's not the invincibility star like in Super Mario Brothers, nothing like that. So I think it really all is that definitely understand businesses want to get back to normal, as we love to say, normal life. But I think we all need to evaluate, including organizations and companies, is normal life now changed going forward based off what we've gone through in the last 15 months, as our article mentioned, because, and I will say that's one potential positive thing when it comes to COVID that might have helped speed up the process when it comes to certain people and organizations moving forward into the future when it comes to innovation and how they see the business and how the business should work and stuff like that. So, and this isn't any different. So yeah, I think all that is going to determine what each individual company does when it comes to bringing back our employees in June partially and sticking to that model, or we're coming back to the office in the fall, or right now, we don't care. So it's going to vary a little bit. And I don't know what you want to share about your organization or what you don't have to, but definitely I'd love to hear your opinion on what your thoughts are about companies now in the summertime getting back either partially or otherwise to bringing people back into their normal work office type environment.
Gotcha. Yeah, Jason, I definitely feel like at some point in the fall, assuming, of course, that the kiddos return to standard operating procedure for school, that I will proceed to go back to what is more of a hybrid model for being remote for certain days, being remote for certain hours, and of course, having an in-face presence, because I desire that as part of my professional presentation, if you will. I've definitely been a big proponent of hybrid models. And I think that other companies, because of COVID, have seen that, oh, wow, there is, for the right people in your organization, you're going to see, oh, wow, we're getting the same amount of productivity. That person just isn't spending a lot of time on the expressway or the train in some scenarios. So I think the hybrid model, not only for my organization, but for a lot of people, that motherfucker is here to stay. And you're going to see some people in certain sections of the economy, they're going to say, "Hey, we want more stuff like that," because ultimately, those people the last year and a half, they worked their asses off, and they feel like, "Hey, I've already proven that I can be a productive member of your organization in a remote scenario." But I also think there's a lot of people that, this individual mentioned the commercial real estate side of it, and that can't be discounted either. I think that's why you're also saying there's going to be more initiatives for literally getting a company to do it, like a vaccination drive, literally in-house at their shop or their building, because that's ultimately, we're talking about what consumers and prospective employees are comfortable doing. And I also think it's no different than any of the other incentive initiatives that the United States has been pushing to get people vaccinated. So I think that will help matters with regard to commercial real estate, because whatever my personal feelings related to working remotely, it's not going to be a good look for the economy if commercial real estate fucking dive bombs off a cliff. So I do hope that more employees have choice. I hope that more companies offer choice and offer flexibility. I think that's what a lot of people desire. I think that's been the biggest impact of a lot of us working remote the last 15 months is that, oh, wow, I didn't even know how how freeing it was to even have a choice. You know, some folks being remote the last year and a half realized they fucking hated it. At least they know now. And maybe they found out some things about themselves. Maybe they found out some things about the other people in their household. Who knows? But at least they know. I think that is a rather illuminating reality for a lot of people. And if that drives individuals and organizations to say, okay, we need to rethink what our physical presence at a store or at a commercial building looks like, well, the commercial real estate is going to have to adjust to effectively continue to fill up these sections, to fill up these buildings, to fill up these shops, because it's not like Amazon stopped being Amazon the last 15 months, man. So they definitely need to adapt and get with the times. And you're even going to notice that there are some employers that literally are offering things like room and board at their commercial real estate situation. What we consider to be work-life balance has changed forever. And maybe it should have.
And that's exactly, and that's what I was mentioning before when it comes to innovation and companies realizing, hey, maybe we need to change how we do things. Goldman Sachs, if you're, for those who aren't familiar, they're like a multinational investment, financial services, banking company or whatnot. They apparently not too long ago, last month, told their employees start making plans to return to the office on June 14th, which is next week. And they're, of course, telling people that, they're a culture of collaboration, innovation, and apprenticeship and things like that. Well, apparently their employees want that more flexible environment as well, because they don't want to return back to the office, according to an article that I found on CNBC, but also backed up by an article I found on Forbes, that these employees don't want to return to a office environment where they're working 90 and 100-hour weekends like they usually do. They want that flexibility to work from home, which will probably ease up the load on their workload. Because I'm sure you can imagine working pretty much all weekend, every weekend. Probably people don't want to do that when they can do their stuff from home. So yeah, if people in that kind of a high profile type of organization are kind of feeling the same thing, I'm sure Joe Schmo, Joe Blow, and Jenny around the block, whatever, might say the same thing at their workplaces, including me and you. We want that extra flexibility to either work from home when we want to. There's more options because, especially if you're at a company where productivity is high as it is, we're still willing to put out that work for you in the high regard we had before, but also maybe in some cases even more so than we were doing before. You know why? Because we're working in an environment where we can thrive, and not that we weren't before, but thrive even more. Because, I agree with you that a lot of people don't want to like working from home, and either they still don't. I definitely initially was not interested in working from home. When my company made the announcement that, hey, because of the virus, you all got to start working from home, I'm like, I was totally dead set against it. And I was dreading it. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I want to keep working home separate. After the first week of working from home, I was over that real quick. So I definitely understand people's, anxiety about working from home. And again, there's some people that still don't like it, but I think I think that's important. I think as long as companies are seeing the productivity stay the same, not go down, and if they're making more money by not having people in the office, then I have to imagine those two are two big motivators for companies to decide, for this last 15 months, productivity is up, and look at all this money we're saving by not having people in the office. And I think all of that is probably going to lean towards a lot of companies, and some that I know of have decided we're going to work remote 100% permanently. I think that's what a lot of companies are going to start doing, or I've already done.
Jason, here's the thing. While you may be able to offer some sort of hybrid scenario, you have to look at the fact that for many entities, I'll just give you an example. Schools. A physical location That's not going away. Listen, teachers, parents, kiddos have done an admirable job going the Zoom route. None of those audiences want to keep doing that shit for the rest of their lives.
Oh, hang on. So
None of them.
when you say audiences, are you talking about the kids or the teachers?
I'm talking about teachers would prefer, if they had their druthers, to not teach like that. Correct. And parents, if they had their druthers, would not prefer to be in that scenario. And children, also the same.
Do you first? I definitely get that from a parent side of it, teacher side of it. I definitely get that, and for some kids as well. Do you see a point where at some point, I'm glad you brought the school thing. So we kind of touched on this before in the previous episode, but now I feel like we can go into it a little bit, at least a little bit. But so do you feel like maybe at like a certain age level or grade level, it will go all remote permanently? Just because, like for example, high school. Obviously, those kids are legally allowed to be home by themselves. Thus, the parents don't have to take off work. They can still learn. And maybe if you're a school district, maybe you can find some other option. Well, let me ask you this. You know, educators, what would a teacher's hesitancy be when it comes to doing that permanently all the time? Like, what feedback do you know of any as to why a teacher wouldn't like doing that permanently all the time? I would think working from home as a teacher would be fantastic, but that's me.
I think we've underestimated the power of face-to-face interaction. Number one, the mode by which teachers typically have engaged with their students, and also we've underestimated the need of children to benefit from face-to-face interactions.
So wait. So, and I don't know if you can explain this. So explain to me the difference in face-to-face in person when it comes to why that's needed more so than face-to-face like you and I are looking on a computer screen. So I can see you face-to-face. I can still gauge what you're saying to me. So what difference would it be between us having this conversation over the computer screen versus me in front of you?
Well, if you didn't understand something I said, I would just pause this fucking podcast and text you and say, fam, what the fuck are you talking about? Teachers that I know, love, and respect can't do that in the teaching industry. So in some ways, while tech became a great enhancement, there are still some limiting factors for engagement on a Zoom basis. You got 30 fucking kids on a Zoom call. How am I going to be able to keep track of all of them to ensure that they're all learning? I mean, you effectively have 30 individuals, 30 different ways of processing information. How do you ensure that everyone is getting what they need on a Zoom call?
How do you do it in person?
Well, for one, you're actually reading what if they're processing that information face to face. It's a lot harder to do that if I'm 3 hours away.
But I can still see you if it's on video. So that's like I can see your face now. I can see your reaction to whatever I'm saying to you. I can see your reaction, so I can understand how you're accepting that information. So
right.
Yeah.
You can see it, but you can't do anything about it. That's the trick.
When you say not do anything about it, like what are you talking about?
I'm talking about the teacher's ability to affect change on a day-to-day basis, on a kid-to-kid basis, because they're not there. They're not there in the moment.
I feel like this is the perfect situation where having like a special guest, like an actual teacher on the show, because I'm not getting it. Because I definitely, I guess I'm thinking of it from I can still see you aspect. So I can see what you're doing. I might not be able to reach out and say, hey, touch your desk and say, hey, what's going on to keep you engaged that way. I get that. But I guess from a teacher aspect, and since I'm still able to see you, I guess I'm not getting as to how you're not able to tell what's going on with individual A. I mean, I don't know. Maybe this past year might be different because you still maybe knew some of the students, perhaps. But I guess going forward, it's kind of hard to know them, know the personalities, with them because you're not there with them. But as far as, hey, I'm teacher A, I'm giving this lesson on, uh, uh, geography. I should be able to. Well, I shouldn't say should, but I can see you.
Now, now you can see how quickly this can go off the rails because neither of us are in the teaching profession.
And like I said, this is a perfect example of us being able to okay, this is a segment we should need some expert, opinions here from my actual educator, which, but yeah,
here's what I think. I think for teachers that listen to the show and you've made it through a year and a half, 2 years of teaching remote, you tell us what you want the future of teaching to look like. Because you got some people, and I can tell you, some parents made this mistake where they felt like, oh, well, I feel like I'm doing my teacher's job because they were helping run fucking tech support, which is fucking absurd. You're not fucking coming up with lesson plans. Like, if the only issue you had during COVID as a parent and your kids were at home and the worst thing you had to worry about was, hey man, the internet was weird for like 5 minutes and I had to restart the router, it doesn't make you a teacher.
That's like people saying that when I go to Walmart, I don't want to do the self checkout because I don't work at Walmart. You should be doing that. You work at Walmart, so that's the same kind of crap. I get that, but yeah, man, I guess the same thing applies to employees that don't like working from home. I get that the same to teachers don't, but I guess it goes back to what I was saying before: is that companies, or in this case, schools, are going to do what's best for the bottom line. And that should be their main focus, and probably isn't. But if they can somehow save money by not having kids in the classroom, not having teachers in the classroom, they're probably going to do it. So, hang on.
I'm going to challenge you.
It may not happen in our lifetime.
How are you saving money?
Where kids are not going to be in the building for school. It might not happen in our lifetime, but one day that is going to happen, where kids are not going physically to a classroom, at least not publicly around other kids. That's going to happen at some point. There's no way of getting around it. It is going to happen. I think if you think about it, you'll acknowledge that. Might not happen in the next 60 years before I'm dead, but it's going to happen.
Jason, I would argue that given that parents had to take on certain responsibilities that, frankly, they didn't anticipate having to deal with the last 15 months, that timeline has been extended.
I really have to disagree with you on that one, bro. I think it's still sped up. It might take longer than other actual companies, and I get that. But extending it, I don't know. I mean, well, again, how much say are parents going to have having that choice if a school district makes it? I know they have PT, parent-teacher meetings and school board meetings and crap like that. But guess what? The school board can listen to whatever parents they want to, but the school board's going to make whatever decision they want because they got to do what's best for their interest.
Jason, I don't feel like you've been paying real close attention to some of these crazy ass school board elections happening around the states. We should probably put a pin in that for further research.
Fair enough. And again, I have no clue how he went from talking about going back to work to, having a forum on, long-term success of, not having in-person schooling anymore for kids. I'm not sure how we got to that point.
I can totally tell you how we got there because listen, this whole thing is a fucking house of cards anyway, because that whole article about wanting to buttress commercial real estate from Greg Meyer in Washington, D.C., that story can be told anywhere in the United States. This whole thing is a house of cards. And what a lot of folks realize is that, oh shit, a lot of our economy is dependent on children being in school face to face.
Folks, I think we might have found another topic for a future episode here. So If you think you might want to hear that, send us a shout out somewhere, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, social media, whatever. Our email address, cowparkbros@gmail.com. But yeah, I definitely think we hit on a subject that might need its own attention. Because what you just said, I would love to hear more about that opinion about why you think that. So we're not going to go into it right now, but I would love to hear your opinion on why you say that.
Yeah, I listen. Based on the last year, we'll bring up some articles, and this is probably a good segue for some of the initiatives we're going to talk about that involve not only the podcast, but also some experiences that are going to involve video. I can tell you about all the crazy shit that parents think that they want from their school experience for their children based on the last 15 months, both where I live and elsewhere. So I look forward to it, my friend.
Well, one last thing I'll say just in general, that parents need to realize or recognize that what your kids' experience is important to you. But what you need to realize is it ain't just about you and your kid, period. I'll leave it at that.
I mean, good luck telling that to anybody who has kids.
I'll tell that to anybody. I don't care who you are about any subject. It ain't all about you. I don't care if it's talking about school or whatever else. It ain't about you. It ain't about your kids. It's about the whole community of kids and parents. It ain't just about you. You might think your kid's special, and they may be in some sort of way to you. But when it comes to decisions about the school district or school board, it goes beyond you and your kid. So once again, any parent who thinks they or their kids above everybody else, think that. When it comes to this, sit down, relax, take another sip of your non-alcoholic beer in front of your kids, and shut up.
The fact that you modified that tells me everything I need to know.
Hey, man, I'm all about considering the kids, man. I'm all about that. It's for the kids. Don't bring them here to the show.
Yeah. Better not bring your kids.
Yeah.
All right. That concludes segment 2 regarding the Great Office Return. Coming up next, we'll talk about the trials and tribulations of one Naomi Osaka on Cow Park Bros.